Good morning, Year 8, and welcome to the third lesson of this first week back after Easter, working on non-fiction reading skills. In this lesson, I'll be reviewing the text on Edward Whymper. So if you haven't done that one, go back and do that first. Okay, so that was called Scrambles Amongst the Alps by Edward Whymper from 1860-69. And you'll need to know about that to answer this question. The purpose of this video is actually to model how to answer a particular type of evaluation question. And it looks like this. It'll always look like this, okay? It will say, a student who has read this text has said, and then there will be quote marks, okay? I feel sorry for the other two survivors, old Peter and his son, who are treated poorly and have much to lose, close quote. And then the question is based on that quotation, that opinion, okay? And you have to do two things to evaluate that. First is to look for evidence. What evidence can you find to support this? And secondly, do you agree, or even to some extent? Usually there's something to agree with, but it's okay to disagree as well. The important thing is that you're relating it to the evidence in the text and you're thinking critically. So you're not taking things at face value, you're looking at the words they've used and how they've presented them. And just like we did with last lesson, we know that words express attitudes. Last lesson we looked at the words that Edward Whymper chose. He expressed his attitude to all kinds of things, including the other end who said we're crying like infants. Okay, so how do we go about that? Now, this is not the question that you're going to do. This is my example, but it's really important that you understand the process. So bear with me. Your question is going to be this one. It's a different quotation. One student has read this text and said, at the end of the text, Edward Whymper seems like a danger to himself and others. He's behaving like a villain, not a heroic survivor. But you have to do the same thing. What evidence can you find to support this opinion, and do you agree? And then you'll go and write your answer and submit it by forms. So I'm not giving you the answer to this, and you're still going to have to go away and do this process of your own question, but it's important you know what I'm expecting. So the first thing is evidence. Evidence of the idea that they are treated poorly and have much to lose, specifically relating to old Peter and his son, who are the other two survivors, and whether we feel sorry for them. I mean, they didn't die, but they haven't had an easy ride. So I've actually focused this on the second page of this text, and I went back through and with my highlighter picked out things I thought would be helpful to answer this question. And this is what I came up with. I've got a range of quotes down here. So, evidence that we should feel sorry for them. And the first quote I picked out was, we are poor men. We have lost our her. A her is like the person you work for, and we shall not get paid. We can ill afford this. If you can ill afford it, you can't really afford it. You know, it's okay for some people to miss a paycheck, but they needed every paycheck. And for each of my quotes, I've put some notes, what that showed me and why I should feel sorry for them, or signs that they're treated poorly or they've got a lot to lose. So for this quote, I've said, well, it shows they're financially very vulnerable. Okay, so they can't afford to lose anything. That they have failed this mission because they've lost their her. So if you've been hired as a guide and then the person that you were guiding died, they're probably feeling a bit disappointed that they haven't succeeded. Again, and then employer as one. So next bit of evidence that I might like to include was this one. We don't wish you to pay us. Next year there'll be many travellers and we shall get more voyageurs. And what I thought was interesting about this, although it may seem like they're being selfish, I think actually, I also thought, thinking critically, they're worried they won't be hired as a guide again, even though it's just a terrible accident. Because they are being hired as guides, if your last lot of tourists didn't make it back, then perhaps they want to employ you. But actually, that means that they won't get any work again next year. And I also thought it evoked sympathy because they have to risk their lives their next season as well. These men have a really dangerous job. So that was my second bit of evidence. One more. I've got 2 quotes. Cause them to inquire if I wish to kill them. And resting place, a wretched slab, past 6 miserable hours. Now, if you've read the text, you'll know the context of these quotes. The first is that the clearly slightly crazy Mr. Whymper is so angry that they don't want him to pay them, that he madly and recklessly tears down the last bit of the descent, and they're asking, "Are you trying to kill us? Are you trying to get us killed?" Which is a sign that they're in terrible danger, and they're totally at the mercy of Whymper, and he's not necessarily a particularly good employer. Obviously, a stressful situation, and I think it also demonstrates that they then finally he lets them sleep. He keeps going in the dark as well, which sounds quite dangerous. So the descent was continued in darkness. At 9:30, a resting place was found, a wretched slab, barely large enough to hold the 3, and we passed 6 miserable hours. So after spending an entire day descending a mountain, physically exhausting, you get 6 hours sleep on a tiny cold slab. And that, I thought, was indicative of just how hard they work, how little sleep they get, and that they're rarely safe. These are really dangerous places. So I've gone through and I found lots of evidence that would support the idea that we should feel sorry for them, and they are treated poorly and they've got a lot to lose. Do I agree? Probably yes, although they are choosing this work. They don't have to be a guide. So now I need to have a go writing a paragraph. Now I've written quite a long one. I'm probably going to split it up, but I want to show you just what you can do with these evaluate questions. You might prefer to write 2 paragraphs separately because they're actually quite big answers to give. You'll note that in this one I've actually got sort of 2 aspects. We've got treated poorly and much to lose. Well, they're sort of separate as well. Treated poorly, much to lose, and that we feel sympathy. And it's the same with your question. You've actually got 2 things. Whymper is a danger to himself and others, and he's behaving like a villain. They're 2 sides of the same coin, but it gives you something else to discuss. Okay, I'm going to pause here, and in the next video, go over my model.